much, Torbele. So I'm in Ticehurst. I'm the advocacy and movements lead with WEAll, and real pleasure to be here this morning for me. I'm connecting. I'm normally based in Mexico, but connecting this morning from California, um, and so it's very early for me, but it's also quite um, late in the evening or late in the day in India. Um, so we're trying to cross time zones and geographies and cultures today. Um, a big welcome to everyone. And just so that we come together, I just take a moment to close your eyes for a second, take a deep breath so we can deep breath in and come to this space. Another deep breath and a stretch and forget the busy day. And for those that are just waking up, this is an opportunity to wake up. And as Tobele was saying, these talks are opportunities to engage with WEAll members and beyond, but learn from and understand different perspectives and different entry points to the ideas of well-being economies across different geographies. And I see different geographies in the chat. Great to see folks connecting from India. A reminder, we have translation available. If you want to, you can click on the icon on interpretation at the bottom and choose the language. It's for Spanish, into Spanish for those that need that translation. And today's talk is going to be a little different. It's titled "The Unreasonable Transformers: Tales from the Subversive South," and I think we'll get into the that title throughout the dialogue. But it's going to be a dialogue with Pushpanath Krishnamurthy and Manali Divecha about what it means to resist a world of violent exploitation and extraction with beauty and craft and harmony with nature. And Pushpanath, who is popularly known as Push, and I will refer to him as Push with his permission throughout, will be sharing some of the journeys behind his new book, which is called The Unreasonable Transformers of South India. And he's walked thousands of kilometers, um, meeting with weavers and carvers and craftsmen, women artisans, who he calls unreasonable change makers, and who are reviving the soul of India's very large handmade economy, and also defying the odds in the dominant market's violent one. So was born in Bangalore. He's an Oxfam veteran. I met him years ago, an Oxfam veteran and climate activist, and has spent decades walking the landscapes of different parts of Asia, Eastern Europe, and in Africa. And I would say he finds the stories that make injustice impossible to ignore, but also stories of dignity and hope, innovation and resilience in the face of enormous hardship. And Push is going to be joined. We're both being joined. We're all being joined by Manali Divecha, and we're going to have a conversation between the three of us. Manali is a poet, author, and expressive arts facilitator, and she's based in Mumbai, so another part of India. She curates poetry events and conducts arts-based workshops focused on self-expression. And another interesting journey. Before stepping into her creative journey, Manali was a supply chain and procurement manager at Tata Steel and began her career as a civil engineer. And this multidisciplinary background has provided her with diverse perspectives and the realization that creativity is the essence of life, whether that's expressed through art or business or engineering. And since November last year, she's been a member of WEAll. So a big welcome to you both. I don't want to take up longer in the intro and get into this conversation. And to get us started, I would like to ask Manali to give us a bit of a framing to bring us into the context of India. I live in Mexico, and we say there are many Mexicos, and this is more than true of India. And we were just chatting beforehand of the many different languages that there are in India, and the very different geographical and cultural realities in what is a continent. So, Manali, if you can help us sort of understand some of the elements of the context in India as a quick framing, maybe from a historical perspective of how do we get to where we are today?
Right. Am I audible, Simon?
Yep, off you
Great.
go.
Great. Thank you and welcome you all. I would like to set up the context for today's talk from an Indian perspective. So, India is a country in South Asia. You can imagine it in a diamond shape and divide it into four parts: north, south, east, and west. India holds 2.4% of the land, but around 17% of the world population. And it is blessed landscape wise from snow-clad mountains to tropical forests. There are deserts, plateaus, and fertile plains. And being closer to equator, it is naturally a place to sustain life. And that is why the early civilizations began here. And due to which there was a regional, cultural, language, and trade development in different pockets of India. And by early 1700s, India was one of the most economically prosperous country, um, holding around 30% of the world GDP then. Then came the times of colonial powers, and unfortunately, the wealth started dissipating from us. The age old craftsmanship and the artisans slowly lost their skills, and the industrial products or goods were flooded in the Indian markets, which slowly, you can say, eroded the wealth of the country. And by mid 1900s, we had our independence. And by then, the GDP of India stooped to around 3 to 4%. So we had a very huge loss, not only in our culture, but also in our identity, as well as our sense of belonging, I would say. And now I think India is bouncing back and we are right there at the top of the economy. But of course, we are sustaining a lot of challenges as well. Today, majority of India is involved in the services sector, but there are certain pockets which has endured the resistance that we are going to talk about today through arts, crafts, and dignity. And because of the technological advancement that we are having today and the spread of awareness, we are getting this opportunity to undo the exploitation of the past. And that is where Push's work comes in, of bringing the stories and histories back to us, giving us a sense of identity, relief, beauty. And I would say WEAll is one of the few organizations which not only advocates but also embodies the ancient wisdom. So I would thank and be grateful for this opportunity and hand over to you, Simon, so that we can carry on with our conversation.
Thanks. Thanks, Manali. That's great to it's real. I think it's really important to start out with that framing and understanding the colonial history, but also the still very hostile global economy and what it means to operate in that context. And now I'm going to ask you Push. I've known you for a long time, and I met you as an activist in the Oxfam campaigns on trade and climate. But just so people get a sense of who you are as well, and what you bring in your storytelling, I would love it if you could tell us a bit about your own journey, and particularly the importance of the walks, which have become characteristic of your way of engaging, connecting, and also then relating the stories of people, and of you physically placing yourself often in harsh landscapes, and how this walking and way of connecting with the land and with people shapes your storytelling. So give us a bit of background on yourself, Push, so people can connect with you.
Let me first fold my hand in a kind of Indian Hindu tradition. It means that holding to the divine in you, but I will also call the force of good in you to each of you. I'm deeply humbled to be here and greatly fortunate, I think. I basically want to say, I'm a campaigner who tells stories, and it's important for you to know. And about me, just a few things about born 73 years ago in the old Bangalore, which is now the Silicon Valley of India. The old Bangalore south end was right next to the village. It was literally south end. And we used to have this monsoon river reaching the temples, and we had touring cinema coming. And then the Hindu epic, Hindu gods, there are 2 millions of them. So we have a story every day, if you like. So I soaked in all this story. That's part of my story life. As to walk, I walked a lot, not as for exercise, I was a working child, but curiosity and connection came along with that. So walking and story is integral to me. That's something I wanted to say. So why this climate justice walk in 2009? I think we're working on issues of poverty. You found that the climate is actually taking away all the grains. And it really hit first, worst, and hardest, especially women, and I met a lot of them. Their story is a story of heartbreaking. They were beaten, broken, battered. But one of the things that hit my heart was, in spite of all that, they felt they can bounce back with hope and imagination. So, in the words of Gandhi, whom I like, Paulo Freire's action reflection is something I follow. I throw in a bit of Gandhi there. I recall Gandhi walking the Dundee March, which woke up the whole world about India's liberation. And I felt that I need to do something to bring those stories. And that's how, on a day, I just decided I want to walk from Oxford to Copenhagen. And I don't want to call it a walk because it's a march. March is a pilgrimage, it's a civilizational thing. Every culture, every religion does that. And then you have, as you walk along, the walking is as important as destiny. So I kind of recall Gandhi saying, if you see extreme inequality or extreme injustice, you have to do something about it. So I unilaterally decided, as I tend to do, and I walked to Copenhagen. It was a wonderful experience for me. First time I ever done that kind of thing. I used to get lost, but people always put me on the right path. I reached out to, academicians, to churches, to schools, to mosques, and everybody. The way people received me, I was quite stunned because I was not sponsored by anybody. I never asked for money from anyone. And the stories is what got me into people's home, and I carried their stories as well. So that was my first walk. I thought that's it. But when I arrived in Copenhagen, India did not sign up the climate treaty. And I asked why not. So that made me to decide that I have to go back to India. So I went back in 2010 to India, and the next 9 years I stayed in India. And I did two main walks. And I walk always during the COP meeting because I want to bring the voices. But I also go to conference, only two of them. First is Copenhagen. Second one was here in Britain from London to Glasgow. And in these walks, I carry the stories of climate damage. I talk about generational poverty. I talk about destruction of hard-won gains. But most importantly, I said that look, it's the darkest paradox of our time that women and poor people and communities who have not done anything wrong have been punished severely, and that is unjust. And I want to talk more about that. So the coffee one, I talked from the seed to the cup, all the stories. I met about 30,000 people every day in the night. I used to go to the radio and then speak to about 1 million people. And I started to get a reputation because I walk very fast because time is running out. So people used to think I'm some kind of a god man. It helps for you when I have a long hair and so on. And we have done a lot of interesting follow-up on that. Likewise, I walked on the other side of the southwestern mountain, which is the most important and older than Himalayan mountains. And there we talked about fair trade towns and so on. And today in India now, every 5 minutes somebody is buying an organic fair traded shirt or a t-shirt. And so collaboration and cooperation become integral to that. I think I will stop there.
Wonderful, Push. Thank you so much. I love that walking is more important than the destination, and that enables you to connect with different realities and different people. A way of slowing down and connecting. Thank you for that introduction. That gives us a really good insight into who you are. Over to you, Manali.
Yeah. Push, now coming back to your book, I have a question that why did you title it as the Unreasonable Transformers? What is it so powerful about this narrative that you thought that this term would be apt for all the weavers, change makers in the Indian landscape?
Okay. I mean, it's important to actually start off to say that the dominant economic paradigm we live in is extractive and violent, right? And as you pointed out, that India, at the heart of Indian economic development was art, craft, handloom, and so on. They were integral and they're very sophisticated and they're ancient. Why unreasonable? I think I picked it up from Bernard Shaw. He says that the reasonable person will adapt to the world as it is. The unreasonable one will want the world to change in the way they see it. So that's that point I didn't say. That my last walk was in that. Thanks to WEAll, and it encouraged me to go across the southern India to reach out and see what is happening in the craft and handicraft and so on, because I came to realize that the real economy of that is nearly $1 trillion, even though India was only doing about 4.5 billion, and it was employing about 1.5 million. But the real economy could clearly expand. And each of those encounters, each of those persons when I met, it started to kind of reflect in me. God, these are the real subversive people, amidst the high a GDP-driven masculine steroid economy. These guys are working under the thing. Nobody is watching them. And they're doing some stuff which is almost unbelievable, because I know the art world, from early 80s, we used to work to get art into the market. Mostly we got products that we used to bring it to Britain, especially Oxfam and others. 70% of the art craft used to come from India. But it was very hard to do it in India itself. But that landscape has changed. So each one of them, their story, when you look at my book, you will find what an extraordinary journey that has been. How they actually recreated and reimagined the past, and then, link it up, not out of nostalgia or romance or anything, but actually I call them practical utopians. They're trying to take the past, reimagine and reinvent and present it in the world for market, not just the local market, but across India, the region, and globally as well. And the way they have done it is in such a sustainable way. So they're nothing but phenomenal, unreasonable people. And so my idea was to call them from the south because I think immediately people will say, what about north? So it attracts people to look at the south. Number two, when you make a statement like that as a campaigner, people will start to wonder. And if most of the people say, I never in my life thought the word unreasonable can be so positive. So that's really the reason that the unreasonableness clearly resonates with many people and make them to kind of bite into it and start thinking about it. And each one of the character, when you enter the book, I hope you will have the same feeling as I have had and I continue to have.
Beautiful. I think this statement of yours that the dominant world is very reasonable and the ones who are unreasonable are the ones who probably initiate change. I think this will stay with me.
Well, no, the dominant world is not reasonable, but people think it's reasonable. But the
Yes.
unreasonable ones actually have seen that and they say, okay, we're going to recreate this world. But they did not go around with some kind of a slogan doing it, with a certain amount of great dignity and an understanding of what the past is, and then reimagining the past to the present, bringing in technology and whatever you have, and in a process which is making sustainable everything, that they have done. So in that sense, they are powerful, unreasonable characters who actually make us think that change is possible even in most extraordinary times. Yeah.
Awesome. Simon, I would like to take up one more question.
Go for it. Please do.
Thank you. Recently in India, perhaps a month ago, we had quite a buzz around that a luxury brand, they kind of depicted the ancient Indian craftsmanship in their luxury line. And they, I don't know purposely or what, they missed giving us the credit for it. And later on, there was a backlash and uproar due to which they finally took the accountability and visited the craftsmen and given us the recognition that we deserve. Also, in your book, Push, I have seen you mention about the ethical business model. I would like you to correlate these two incidents, like the incident that I talked about and your business model, and tell us some ways in which we can avoid such a gimmick in the world today.
Well, okay. I want us to go back to the dominant economic paradigm, right? It takes without consent, it erases origins, it rewards appropriation. We got more millionaires in the last year in India than any other place. Yeah. Yet we also know there is a large number of people who are living really almost, at the bottom of the so-called poverty line. So even the whole issue you mentioned about the global fashion brand being appropriated, but without even making any reference, it's not an isolated act. It is a global pattern on just about every other thing too. So the question before us is, how do we resist these powerful forces? How do we transform this reality? The answers are already alive. That's my thing. You just have to look at the stories of extraordinary entrepreneurs of India, not just the South. Each story is a distinct fingerprint, rooted in heritage, very clearly, yet awake to the demands of the present, important. And then for them, sustainability is not a slogan, it's a bedrock of their lives. They innovate not by abandoning tradition, but by reimagining it, from responsible raw materials to produce that serve local and also the economic interest, right? And global needs. They span generation, grandmothers teaching granddaughters and grandsons. So does the grandfathers. In their hands, tradition and innovations are woven into a resilience tapestry. Each thread a story of continuity and courage. Authenticity is there, new ideas are embraced, partnerships are made, investment without compromising values. They are not just businesses, they are life lessons important. And it also quite clear by doing this, policymakers, they have these stories as a blueprint for an economic revitalization that sustainable creates job, climate resilience. For consumers, it's a political act when they buy it, and it's happening in India now. And then for investors, they offer a rare opportunity. There is profit, but there's also planetary well-being. Yeah. So in this sense, when more of this done, it actually pushes the message that nobody can take these things for granted. It's not about protest. People can rightfully assert themselves to say that enough is enough. So in that sense, it's in a way good it happened that the Kolhapuri slippers, which have been there for more than 1,000 years now, appropriated by somebody, but suddenly people realize, good God, what we have is so precious. So in a way, it also gives a good sign. And for these entrepreneurs, they are very, very kind of, they actually demonstrated that this whole economy as Kula or 200 million artisan, a new organization which has come up in the last couple of years, say the Indian art, craft, handloom economy is a $1 trillion economy in money terms, and it can actually support nearly 200 million people. That's a phenomenal thing. But it's hard work. Today's growth agenda in India, as you know, it's very masculine, it's a GDP driven, it's a steroid. But green shoots are there. We are already seeing, that kind of movements among Generation Z. As a population in India, which I was going to say is 60% under 30, the present is the future. It's not about future generation. So it's happening. But it's hard work. We're not going to transform. The power of the dominant paradigm is so much. But these guys know how to swim against the current. And it is for us to join those, little points and bring it together and show that the landscape is actually shifting. As Gandhi would have said, let us gently shake the foundation. And this is what these guys are trying to do.
You think this is the start of the golden age again, maybe?
I don't know. I think what is happening is it actually demonstrates from extraction to reciprocity, from exploitation to respect, from violence to well-being. Yeah. So that's what I think. There's no need. It is the future that we're worth fighting for. So there's no need to shout about it. Indeed, as I'm saying, that there's no resistance. There is an alternate reimagination. You see how there's no protest by presentation of a powerful example. So, which is a different kind of thing. Oftentimes we think that, we have to take on those in power who are trying to suppress us by our fight. But this is not even a fight, It's rewriting with reimagination of invention that actually hits you right where it makes you start to rethink yourself. So, yeah. I think it is something that really for in an India the way it is the power, the speed, Bangalore is called now a Silicon Valley, yeah. But what we need to think about is that within that there are a lot of changes happening. It is a multicultural and multi-geographically present. As many gods as we have 8 religions in the country. Yeah, we have had 24 official languages. We have 1,660 dialects. So in that's why I call it a subversive act. But subversive is again here is a wonderfully nice tasting, nice hearing word. It's not something against. Are you with me?
Yes. It's rebellious, but not in the traditional terms.
No, that's exactly. They are there, not in the traditional way we think, this is something, they're doing it because it's romantic, they're going into the past. No, they're rewriting the present using the past in a very powerful way, in a way which wasn't conceived. I didn't even think in a way it was possible until I went and encountered them. And what I have seen is probably 0.01%. It's like 3 tablespoons of elixir. I have given it to you. I hope you will all taste it little by little.
Amazing. Last question from me, Push and Simon. Sorry, won't take much of your time. Push, you have been to a lot of walks, plus you have met a lot of weavers and craftsmen in India as well. So, do you see any pressing issues that they are facing, which can help us unite and maybe formulate a solution to bring them more to the spotlight?
Yeah, you asked me about what are the pressing challenges for artisans, right? Yeah. It's a question I've been carrying in my head over a year. It is like a little stone in my shoes, you know. Wherever I went, walk through weaving villages or talking to women who are knotting threads and so on, or the smell of dyes, which is non-poisonous, by the way, you know. So oftentimes people say that, look, the most important thing for us is to have capital. Yeah, I mean one of the area of capital. But we talk about capital as if it's going to be a magic which is going to transform everything. Yes, capital matters, but what I am talking about is a patient capital. A capital that actually waits and listens, the kind that knows that gestation of craft is not measured in quarters of fiscal years, but it's in seasons and lifetimes. Yeah, so that's one of the thing. But I want to tell people that nothing in the world in terms of business and enterprise has come about on its own without the help and support of investors and government. Even the Silicon Valley you're talking about, or Elon Musk and his rockets have been subsidized. Yeah. So the question is that yes, they need public investment. It is a secret scaffolding, for them. So it should be for loom, chisel, die pot, and so on. It's not a charity. They're actually recreating a new economy which actually brings everybody's well-being into it. Money is one limb. The body revival needs many others: design support, processing, not as an afterthought, a supply chain that is a golden pathway. Okay. And we can also look at the most important thing. How about markets? That's what they say. Most of them I met, they say, first, don't bother about money. Show us the market. Market, market, market. So that's an important one. And not market as dumping grounds. There should be a living conversation between maker and buyer, between rural courtyard and city skyline, promotion that does not steal the story. We also need platforms, not just apps. By the way, Kula has just released a new platform now for exchanging and so on. We should be careful. Just creating great platforms would change the world. We should have changed everything by now, right? So we need, yeah, it's important. It's not like we have the best library, so everybody's enlightened. No, that's not happened. So we need to think about the places where artisans can stand shoulder to shoulder, where collaboration is not mistaken for conspiracy, where collective, in danger in India, if you all come together, people will think you're our opposition. So we need to be careful about these things, how we bring these elements into our whole conversation, how we actually showcase the way things are done here, and why they need the kind of collaboration and cooperation which doesn't take them for a ride. So those are the three things. One is the capital, second is the design, so on. The third is the kind of market that they need. The fourth is a recognition of what they have done. The green revolution in India actually helped us geopolitically and also food security wise, but we have paid a heavy price for that in terms of poisoning everything in our planet and so on. It was necessary at one point of time. So now reversal is taking place. But this particular thing, art, craft, and so on, it's entirely sustainable. It is also ahimsa, what Gandhi said. Not every one of them does that. But take a vegan silk story in my thing. A businessman who had silk as a large business, he threw it out and now he's starting vegan silk. They are exception, but there are also a few others who go deep into this whole thing. Yeah, we'll come to that in probably when we talk about what's the relationship between well-being economy and the non-violent economy.
Actually, let's get into that, Push. I think it amazes me that a $1 trillion economy can be unseen, underinvested in. but as you say in the book, it's been hidden beneath layers of exploitation and disregard. And I was thinking, given I love the way you talk about the way the dominant economy takes without consent, and it extracts and exploits. And actually, Ugar in the chat has talked about the ahimsa economy as a pathway for dignity, and you mentioned the ahimsa economy now, and that is explored quite a bit in the book as a sort of a non-violent alternative. And so, can you give us a bit of an explanation about what that is actually? What this non-violent economic alternative. As you said, the answers are already there. What does this mean in practice in terms of the change makers that you met with, and how does the ahimsa economy, this non-violent economy, intersect with the well-being economy?
Thank you. I mean, I think this is the most important one and probably the most difficult one for me because unlike you guys, I'm not a policy guy or an economist or so on. But I try to think it over, and a little bit of tongue in cheek, if I may, you will. What I thought is right. Hey, where do they hold hands? These two, the ahimsa. The ahimsa economy is actually came about with Gandhi's way of looking at our economy and society and so on. But it was articulated in a fantastic book by Dr. Kumarappa in 1942. Yeah, it's called the permanence. It's the permanence. Yeah,
economics of permanence.
Yeah, economic permanence. So when you look at that and you look at well-being, you can see we both are kindred spirits there. Both start from the ground up, human dignity, ecological limit, fairness, not as charity but as architecture. In both worlds, the soil is more than dirt, rivers are more than pipes, people are more than human capital. They agree the health of land and health of its people cannot be traded on stock exchange. Both refuse the intoxication of endless growth, swapping the fevered race of GDP for a quieter pulse. Okay. Where do they stand apart? The well-being economy speaks in the language also of policy briefs, global frameworks, and also movement. But Kumarappa, he speaks the dialect of mud walls, millet fields, and the village square. He doesn't just ask us to measure well-being, he insists we live it. Through spinning wheels, shared granaries, moral. Not all of them are doing that, but there are some who follow Gandhi's approach very strictly in India. Well-being economy also looks at systems change while they're wearing the suit of modern economics in some way. Kumarappa tears up the suit, composts the cloth, and weaves the khadi in its place, the one I'm wearing. Where tensions whisper, well-being economy has a room for urban skyline lit by renewable grid. Kumarappa dreams of small clusters of self-sufficient communities. One makes peace with some central kind of coordination. The other, slow wisdom, local ownership. Both call for justice, but Kumarappa's justice is inseparable from renunciation, spiritual refusal of greed, something modern framework often sidestep, right? So the overlap, call it a shared refusal to let the market define the worth of life, to measure the future only in profit, to see nature as inventory. Both remind us permanence is not stasis. Both well-being is not luxury. The first is about roots deep enough to weather centuries. The second about branches wide enough to shelter everyone. Together, they make a forest worth living in. Where have I seen this alive? In my journey. I saw this vision walk the earth again. Change makers, craft people, farmers, weavers, building local self-sustaining economies deeply anchored in the soil. Their work is neither extractive nor exploitative. Further still embodying the ahimsa. Not everyone is following every one of this. Not everyone even would have read Kumarappa or Wellbeing Economy. But some go deeper in the ethic of non-violence. Other inward into power, prayer, spirit, and soul's own journey, which a bit of that I embrace. They recover the wisdom of our grandmothers, how to weave a sari, stitch a blouse, shape pots, cutlery. And they marry these traditions to present day design, reshaping the future without severing the past. They stay deep in their environment. They are not yet sharing this synergy with each other, but perhaps that's a gift. 100 unique portals through which we can either exchange and weave cohesion into flexible living environment. The last bit, if I may say, in the quiet labor of unreasonable champions, weaving ahimsa into trade, memory into design, roots into wings, the economy of permanence and the well-being economy meet, not in theory, but in the living rhythm of communities that scale deep, leap far. Thank you.
Thanks
That's
so
a
much,
beautiful
Push. Love
poetry.
that. Yeah, very poetic. Yeah, so that gives us all, I think, a really good introduction and flavor of what's in this book. Actually, this is Push's book that we've been talking about, the stories that of the unreasonable transformers, and I think there's an invitation for all of us to become unreasonable and subversive in how we move forward in this in a non-violent way. So we're going to open up for some questions. If there are questions, please do raise your hand in the chat if you'd like to ask Push or Manali something about what you've been hearing, and we can explore this more. I see Ugar coming in. Good
Yes,
to see you, Ugar. Please go ahead.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for all of that. I have also actually been working with unreasonable transformers. Yeah, unreasonable transformers for the last 10 years. And you're right. I mean, they're kind of not seen. There's also this great book by J.K. Gibson Graham about community economies. And there's this whole sort of iceberg model. And actually, all of these economies exist in India. They exist everywhere in the world. They exist in Turkey. They exist in the north as well. But they're unseen. They're under the iceberg. And kind of what you're doing there is like bringing them to the up, making them visible. And these unreasonable transformers are beautiful people. I mean, I've been working with them in goodfortrust.org, which is a platform, bringing all of these unreasonable transformers together and allowing them to collaborate and so forth. But there's a sad story also. And the sad story is, in the last 10 years where we have been operational, close to 65% of them have gone extinct. So essentially they have these wonderful emotions, their determination and so forth. But within 10 years, 65% of them close shop. And you talked about some of the challenges, but those challenges still remain. And I'm just wondering, how do we really get rid of those challenges? How do we actually make it happen? And what are some of the leverage points that we can use to make them not go extinct and really create the economy that we are all sort of imagining? That's my question.
Thank you for that. There's no doubt, especially in a context of, turbulent economy, so much, suddenly US declares that there's a tariff on this and tariff on that and so on. It can actually completely destroy small enterprises. Part of the thing that they are able to kind of overcome is because of their localization and having a little bit of market outside. COVID actually challenged them immensely, and I mentioned this when Samuel and me were talking, I'm also a humanitarian worker and so on. When we actually at the tipping point is when we will reinvent ourselves. So I have actually seen during COVID, some of these people really struggled a lot, because, market wasn't easy, cost was going up and everything. And they found ways and means of reaching out, where their community was local, they started to spread those community. Who was helping? The best communicators. And this is what I mean. We have to be able to tell these stories not as something romantic or something, we are reviving something, but as a great rethinking of the very economy. And in the process, I think, people just don't tell that if you take even Britain, every year, 60% of the small enterprise collapse. And there are various agencies will come back and again to revive them. That is true. I used to work in a bank. We know that even normal enterprise collapse. Yeah. Because of various other reasons. Yeah. Including capital availability, interest rates, and so on. So I think the answer is within this own organization. The answer is in us for us to be able to start communicating this. And the answer in is there. This is one thing I didn't talk about it. Because these individuals are so kind of unique in many ways, right? They dig deep into themselves. They're not very easy to go across. So people are saying, okay, we will create these platforms. Good idea. But I think we need to find different ways in which we are able to bring some kind of resources which can bring these people together and spend time together. Indeed, I'm asking somebody in Auroville to actually bring these 24 people so we actually spend 1 or 2 days together. I'm looking for people to support. So that's when I want to raise some of these questions. But to say, yes, this is a challenge. And so is a challenge for every other business too. And there are ways in which people, when we collapsed, the whole banking collapsed, the state took care, right? Do you remember 2008? Yeah. So I think it's not impossible. We have to find, some people taught me as a campaigner, try to use the same words they use, not throw the words back, but we need to have our language actually, sculpted in a way. We actually take existing things that happened, how businesses got protected. There are more subsidies that goes to the businesses in India. I told you, if you look at Musk, Trump is threatening him that he will take away the subsidy. So there are those kind of things. We need to be able to be very smartly recapture some of these things and retell the stories. And we need to be sharp communicators of this. But in any of these businesses, we need to accept there will be 15 to 25% that will collapse. But there will in another way they will re-emerge as a green shoot. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Ugar. I think there's also a growing impact investment financial sector looking to match with these unseen, invisible economy, invisible in inverted commas. So finding ways to shining the light on this is a really important first step. And we have, I'm wary of time, but we have room for a question from you, Kathleen. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Push. Manali, appreciate the opportunity to learn about your work today. My question, I've read, you mentioned earlier about scaling deep, and I think you sort of answered my question earlier in the discussion, but I'm just curious if you don't mind, elaborate a little more on the concept of scaling deep, and what are some of the benefits, and how can one help the craftsmen, women out there? And that's my question, my list of questions. Thank you.
Manali, you want to do that or you want me? I'm trying to. Yeah, go for it, please.
I can just give a perspective. Maybe you can take it on a bit more on a deeper level, Push, because you would have interacted more with the viewers. For me, I think when we dig deep, we finally understand our own patterns and behaviors, and that is where the change starts. For example, maybe till the last year, even I was going for the big brands and maybe industrial products. But now, as I'm sensitizing myself to the Indian culture, background, history, I am starting to have those minor changes within myself to change my lifestyle and adopt to the things that really matter without any external force asking me to do that. So I think awareness, stories, value, and the knowledge would be very precious to bring about any change.
Thank you, Manali. I can just add to that. I think, my the major second walk, as I told, in Southwest India, I talked about, because the coffee farmers, we did some work there and something is happening fantastic there. But I wanted to look at how do we interact with business. So we looked at the fair trade model, and I undertook that walk about 500 kilometers, and also setting up fair trade towns and so on. How did that work? The key strategy was schools. We took schools and we started to talk about, do you know who made this? Do you know who got how much money? Do you know what it means to make this in terms of water, in terms, And then slowly got them into. Today we have more than 20,000 students in South India. And most of them also, because these were all mostly private schools, by the way, some government schools, they also come from affluent middle to upper middle class who consume, as you said, a lot of things. They started to challenge their parents as well. And that was a very interesting, and we learned a lot. And indeed, some of the young people, of course, I helped them to go to the supermarket and start to ask, do you have fair trade products? So if I may say it, but it took some time. I'm saying that this is another thing I want to say. The moment we come up with alternate, let us not think, okay, overnight we got this silver, whatever, and we're going to transform this. No, it takes time. Since I walked in 2015-16, today, the fair trade market in India is about 6 million, 7 million pounds. Okay. And every 5 minutes in India, even you may probably not come across Manali, every 5 minutes somebody is buying a fair trade shirt or a fair trade t-shirt or a fair trade whatever linen in India. Yeah. But it took about 10 years. And it took about investment, That investment came from EU, European, because they understand here, fair trade here in Europe was a movement created by volunteers and schools and so on. So the politicians also have to. So the consumers have the best power, the most power. So how do we get to the consumers in India? The consumers are all under 30, 35 young people who themselves want to, look at what's happening there, and they clearly see good and bad in some way. So work with the schools, work with those kind of, but it's a slow process. We have to put together, there's a fair trade manual which you can use and so on. But we wanted to add fair trade with organic because we're looking at sustainable. So that is how the fair trade economy in India started. When we finished, I'll show you some of the product quickly for people to see. Okay. Thank you for that question. That's an important one. But as I said, I'm not an expert in anything. I just absorb stories and actually repeat it in the best way I can. So I may not have answered you in full measure, but it's for all of us to take this forward, to think through, what can we do? I've heard this story and I have something to say in the end about that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Push. So I think we have, if anyone wants to ask a question, when following in the chat the conversation around the idea of well-being and the need to define maybe or redefine well-being, and we see. I mean, I think it's very clear the shift that needs to happen if we put the purpose of well-being of people and planet at the center. Very quickly we get into this conversation and we move away from this dominant logic of profit and growth. So how do we make this shift happen? This is the challenge that I think we can see the what needs to happen and the what that needs changing, but it's the challenge is how we get to that. And so I think we've seen a number of ways of how, including shining a light on this unseen and invisible economy. So I'm just wary of time now. I would really encourage you to look out for the book. Continue this. We're going to share the recording of this. Did you have one last word from you, Push and Manali, perhaps before we close?
Yes, please. Manali?
Okay, I'll just quickly say that I think that the dark times are behind us. Yeah, and I can see hope today and in future.
Okay, thank you. I think from my side, what I'm wearing here is almost about 1,000-year-old traditions here. My scarf, this shirt hibiscus, and this one here, pomegranate dye. Yeah. If you look at this diary, the pattern here is almost 500-year-old. This pattern is used for women's blouses. The market there stopped. So the person came up with this diary, handmade papers, and look at this one, how beautifully done, and perhaps we all members can all buy. And I just want to quickly show, this is the organic shirt on the high street. It's on the high street, fair trade organic. I want you to see. Can you see that? At least 1,000-year-old. Now this is on the market. It's in great demand, color and so on. So, and the last one, made out of waste. It took him 3 weeks. Yeah. And people actually placed order last year so that they can get it in time. So the things that are happening, So these are the things I really wanted to show you. And I'm asking you not about buy my book. No, I didn't even think I'm ever going to have a book in my life. I'm now 73. I'm going to be 74. But what I had was these stories. So if this story touch you, I would like to tell the story to other people because these people deserve. Remember the question that was asked. We may try to do something, it will collapse. We do not have the kind of support. Where is the best support that comes? When the word of mouth, when the social media is so powerful, we need to be using it to the best of its support. So I'm just appealing to each of you. Please, if possible, buy my book. Maybe Manali can buy on behalf of WEAll from India and give it to our members. That's one of my marketing strategy. So, and I think I would like you to take this story. And please believe me, what I have written is less than 1% of what is already happening. Don't forget that. Yeah. So, and I want to say this has been a wonderful experience. I mean, to share to some of the best people who have assembled here. And I was terrified. I hope I have done some justice for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Push, and thank you, Manali. And just to say, Tobile's put in the chat, we're going to continue this conversation. We got the September talk is going to be on the blue moral economy. So we'll continue this with Tariq Al-Olemi, and that's another emerging area of what we might call a new dawn. This is the stories that you've been relating, Push, and commenting on, Manali, make me think that this isn't a sunset economy. It is quite a hopeful way of looking at the potential for a new dawn in a way.
It's a powerhouse, as they say. It's a powerhouse.
And just to close, I had this in mind. This quote from the Indian author Arundhati Roy, when she says, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way, and on a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." And I think all your walks and connections, Push, have helped us see that another world is possible, and help us hear and listen to the potential of that world. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Push and Manali, for engaging on late in the evening in India, very early in the morning from California. Have a great rest of the week, and look forward to continue to be connected, and we will share the recording from the talk. Thank you so much,
Simon.
everyone.
Thank you, Tobil. Thank you, Manali, for enabling this to happen. You guys put in a lot of work. I want to say I'm grateful to you guys and for all the people who have come.